Hi, guys. So we're back here live, and you know the drill. We're going to hang out for about 60 seconds here until everybody gets here, and then we will start the conversation. Okay, so I think we're going to be ready to go here in just a couple seconds. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly DSS break. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here live every Thursday to talk about data science experiences and best practices with leading professionals in a 15-minute break. I'm Anna Anderson, CEO and founder of Formulated by Home of Data Science Salon, and I'm streaming here live from our HQ located in the heart of Miami next to the beautiful Design District. And for today's edition, I'm very excited to welcome Moody Hadi, Group Manager, New Product Development and Financial Engineering at S&P Global Market Intelligence. And Moody leads a team focusing on applying modeling techniques such as machine learning and data science to distill information value for risk management based signals. And Moody has been part of our community, I feel like, since the very beginning. So thank you so much for supporting us. And you've been such a great speaker and member of all that we've done. And he's also going to be speaking at the DSS hybrid event that we have coming up on February 16. Welcome, Moody, and I'm happy to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Anna. Appreciate it.
Of course. And I think maybe we could get started and you could tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, sure. I started actually in about 2 decades ago in technology. After undergraduate school, I moved to the Bay Area and worked with quite a few startups. We're still surprisingly around now. And through that work, I kind of got exposed to basically, I was building analytical programs for different customers, and I was kind of part of the consulting arm of a few software companies. And through that, I got exposed to basically financial engineering and finance, and I got really interested in it. So I kind of navigated my career, over the next few years to kind of go into basically quantitative finance. So I did my master's in OR in operations research part-time while I was working, and then moved to Chicago, did my MBA in finance and economics, University of Chicago, and started working with QRM, a firm that specializes in asset liability management, then the CME Group, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, in the risk management department, and eventually I ended up in Standard & Poor's, where I kind of moved up the ranks on the analytical track and basically focused on building sort of risk management software products. And yeah, recently I've been, the last 5 to 7 years, been mostly working on different sort of machine learning techniques in finance. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. And I feel like finance is, one of the most advanced industries with machine learning. So I think you're doing some really great work. And I know that you've published some research and spoken a lot about NLP in finance. Maybe you can explain why NLP matters so much in your industry.
Yeah, sure. That's an easy one. So like, I mean, generally in finance, over several decades, right? We've been storing large amounts of data. Just
Yep.
sheer number of transactions, number of documents, number of financial statements. It's only recently, I would say, in the last maybe 7 years or so, where we can actually leverage supervised machine learning to mine this data, right? The computational costs have relatively gone down, especially with the cloud computing, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft's basically offering as well, Azure, like really that made it so much more accessible to run these large distributed neural networks and supervised algorithms and volume on terabytes of data.
Right.
So yeah, so that made it kind of amazing because we already were sitting on it. We just didn't mine it, and now we're able to basically mine it. So text especially is important because we have And that's where NLP, natural language processing, really falls under, right? Because we really have, I would say, I've seen again last 7 years or so, really two major use cases. One is
Mhm.
focused on like what would you could consider automation, and basically kind of paraphrasing that or defining it a bit more is generally improving the efficiencies of a human in the loop, so that
Mhm.
you minimize the amount of effort they have to do, whether it's sort of data entry or whether you're trying to sort of analyze a financial statement, or even reading an article and figuring out if it's saying something positive or negative in that context.
Right.
That in finance can be applied both internally and externally. So internally, as you imagine, like even the public universe that we cover today, we have, well, again, 15 years or so ago, we had people typing things in. As an earnings report comes out, that we've used those techniques internally to create automated processes that basically will automatically fill a financial statement in real time, and a human just has to verify it. Um, so that has really boosted our efficiencies and our cost structure quite a bit. And we've been benefiting, obviously, the clients benefit from having the data, presented to them in an accurate, fast manner. Uh, and the analysts actually can be repurposed to work on more high value added services.
Right.
Externally, we notice the same theme with our customer base, right? So it's the same kind of situation where you're a credit analyst and you have to make a lending decision. um, so whereas someone might send you a financial statement and you've got to more or less type it in, or type in at least the key values, now we have software that allows the client to essentially immediately upload the document in real time and then assign it and spread it. Um, so that's kind of the area I think in NLP that's really exciting, and it's very text based, right? The
Yeah.
other area, yeah. So the other area that is more common, I would say, is sentiment analysis, where I think you've obviously from the
That's
events,
a
like
popular conversation always at DSS events, So.
that's right, and that's I think that's the second use case, right? So that's where
Mhm.
um, in finance specifically, like in S&P, like we obviously cover very much the public universe. We also cover the private universe of companies,
Mhm.
and those are a little more opaque. And we've noticed basically that our clients who do lending activities with them, they want to understand a bit more about what that company is doing, whether that company publishes a news announcement or there's some other collection mechanisms we can, some say informed research or, PR newswire type of things. So
Mhm.
that's where sort of NLP fits in, because we're able to mine those again in real time, collect them, rank them using basically neural networks, and in some cases regularized bag of words, and then basically score the article against that company and roll it back up. So this really
Mhm.
creates transparency around an area that is kind of opaque. And yeah, and that's one area that's really important, because also, like, if you think about, again, finance is pretty deep, and we'll go into it a little bit, right? It's not just the banks and the private equity firms that do lending activities. It's also large non-financial corporates
Yep.
who don't have as much, call it, background necessarily as sort of banks, right? So we try to make that kind of, we try to assist them as well to create transparency, like especially that they do have significant counterparty risk to those basically borrowers, right? So NLP has really been very helpful, because whereas again before, when we first didn't use neural networks, you'd have basically a dictionary of words and you're giving them weight, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's it's
and it's
a
still
lot of
used.
work. It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah, but the problem is you lose the context, right? So
Yeah.
now with neural networks, you can actually take a sample set of a corpus and actually build something that, with labeling, with human in the loop labeling them in the beginning, you can actually train it to actually capture the context. And I think that's the big efficiencies that we've seen in NL, in natural language processing. Again, kind of on the same theme, creating a lot of transparency. Uh, and we still use, by the way, bag of words and regularized bag of words on different models, because they have some benefits as well. But it's usually much more specialized, right? Yeah.
Yep. Got it. No, that's super interesting. And I'm just glad that it's creating such more efficiencies and just better results, right, for everybody. So changes his businesses completely, right? So, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you think data scientists will face this year when building solutions in your industry and finance specifically?
Yeah, I think there's like, yeah, so the biggest challenges, again, from a kind of more of a technical standpoint, I think, and if you find this kind of funny, right? Because I hope it's really managing the computational cost. Like a lot of what
Yeah,
we've, the barrier of entry has been lowered a lot. So we've got folks who can run basically these highly expensive computational programs on the cloud very relatively easily. They can deploy them pretty quick. Now, if you think of a firm like Standard& and Poor's, like we're pretty big, and we have lots of bots running on AWS and other
yeah,
platforms that so managing really kind of figuring out how what sort of that cost is, and then also optimizing your code to not necessarily always take up 24 CPUs, or like an expensive graphic GPU. That's going to be a much bigger theme, I think, for data scientists to sort of worry about, because again, barrier of entry has lowered a lot, and then with Python and R being so accessible, you can run things relatively quickly, but
yeah.
at a cost. The other area I would say is interpretability and explainability, right? So a lot of these, again, being the advantage of something like a bag of words is it's easy to explain. You look at an article, you sum up, you find the words that are positive, negative, you sum them up together and you subtract the two, and there you go. I'm trivializing it, but more or less. So at least you know why you're saying, why you're scoring an article in a negative or a positive sense, or it's very transparent. Now with neural
Mhm.
networks, it's not, right? So there's been a lot of work been done on, locally interpretable, like model agnostic explanations and different types of interpretability, and really some of those techniques are simple, but they cost a lot of time and computation effort, and some are fast, but they're still not there as far as how easy it is to explain to again, your end user, who's really an analyst, not a quant, right? What's
Yeah,
going on. So I think a lot of space will be spent on really trying to design user experiences on desktop that simplify what the neural network is doing. And that's not really a trivial task, right? Like I mean, you're essentially taking features in and out to capture sort of collinearities in the model. And I think that's going to be a very important space in finance, as especially regulators, again, as these models become more and more common, regulation will kind of kick in, and
yep,
that will, that you're going to have to explain that to a supervisor or a regulation or the Fed or some agency, SEC, and that will really, kind of, I think, boost that interpretability area, because it's going to be hard to explain as it is, without that piece.
yep. No, 100%. And no, thank you so much for that's super interesting. And I think for anybody even trying to enter into the finance industry, I thought that would you be able to share some of the most important skills that you think data folks should have, or is there something specific, that they should focus on if they are interested in this industry, specifically finance?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Because finance especially is really a very deep specialized segment, right? So I think if you're a
Hmm.
data scientist or a data professional going into the financial industry, I think the first thing you have to solve is which area you want to look at. So, a capital markets trader or even an equity trader versus a fixed income trader is different. A treasury analyst and a credit originator is different, and they're extremely specialized, deep verticals. So you kind of want to basically pick something that you like had some exposure to or have some interest, and then become very kind of as much as possible, be deeply specialized in that area, right? Because the terminology and the jargon is very different across the two, and how they look at the world is also quite different. The same risk management applications we apply today to credit analysts is not used by, say, a risk manager at the trading book,
Right.
on a desk, right?
Yeah.
Because again, their viewpoint is different. I think that's an area, especially if you're considering, data science in finance, is to really define the finance piece, because it can be very, it is very specialized. The
Yeah,
other
no,
area. Mhm.
yeah, I feel like the people in finance, they don't really move from that field. They just move, like kind of in different companies. But yeah, I feel like that is it's more specialized than other ones in the data space, right? For sure.
Yeah, exactly. And especially like now with data science kind of covering almost every domain, I think I've seen folks come in with just kind of a generalist data science background. I think that really like that's not how I hire folks, for example. I
Yeah.
I expect either there was an interest or they have actually spent some time in the industry, and a specific area in the industry, not just like generic. But I mean, I think the other like sort of thing I would recommend is to actually work on basically prototyping, like really understanding who your end user is, because
Hmm.
that will also build kind of the knowledge in that area that you want to expand in. So like what we've done, and this is like typical life cycle of a new product is you end up getting a concept, whether the executives came up with it or some version of the product management came up with it, then you kind of validate it, and then you basically build a prototype. And that
Yeah.
prototype you expose to basically a client advisory board or a few friendly prospects and clients, and really refine the model and the use case,
Mhm.
and the user experience. And that feedback loop early on really helps us push the final product on our platforms in a very directed manner that solves a specific problem to a client. And I think that it's important not to sort of live in a kind of a box away from basically the end clients. And I think that's something that data scientists should really think about as they kind of go in this industry is know who your client is, speak the same language as they do. Um, they honestly, most clients don't really care if you use a neural network or a bag of words or
Right.
or just, but they have a problem. They have a real problem to solve, and you need to understand what that problem is, basically.
Yep.
Um,
Cool.
yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing. That's great advice. And it was really nice to catch up with you. And we're really excited to have you at the upcoming event, the hybrid event in Miami, the enterprise data science and machine learning in the enterprise, February 14th through the 17th. And we've dropped a link to register for that. And it's going to be partially in Miami, mostly virtually. And it's going to be on demand as well for a couple weeks too. So if you're in Miami area, please definitely check it out. And if you're anywhere else, you can join from anywhere in the world. And thanks again, Moody, for providing these amazing insight. And it's always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Thank
And
you very much, Anna. Thank you.
thanks.
Really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye. Take
Ditto.
care.
Bye, guys. Have a
Bye.
great rest of the weekend.